I think you're just impressed that it wasn't a jump scare ghost fest.
I definitely was. I don't think that's what's like allowing the movie to survive.
I think it is. As someone
You've
who's
done
not
this to me a lot. You do this. It's weird. I wanted to bring this up because I went through and listened through all the episodes of the podcast, and every time I don't like something that you do, you are always absolutely convinced that I am just wrong somewhere. When I do like stuff, you're just like, I guess I could see why you like it, or it's not for me. But every time I don't like something, you're just like, you're fucking wrong because I liked it. And so somewhere along the line, something just pissed you off. And that might be true, but it happens every time.
I apologize. I'll try and keep an eye on it.
I mean, it's fine. It's just an interesting thing that I was noticing that it is every single time. And it happened in Power Rangers too. If you finally liked something and I didn't, then you always had this like,
and I'm ready to throw hands. Like, I don't know. I guess it's just something that like, I'll try and keep an eye on it, but I won't disagree that you're wrong.
I have come on a mission of gravest consequence. For I am the Watcher, member of an ancient race far older than man. But though our power is great, we are pledged only to watch, never to interfere. But now mankind faces the greatest danger it has ever known. The danger of
the Watchers of Earth 199,999.
welcome to the Watchers of Earth 199,999. I'm your
is
host,
it?
Andrew.
It's not the Earth of 96,283?
Is there a universe for...
Yeah, 96,283.
Welcome to the Watchers of Earth 96,283?
Mm-hmm.
Which we would know because we've been doing this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
As always, I am your host, Andrew, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host, Seth.
Buckle up. I think this is going to be a good one, especially after what we just went through.
You completely threw me off, so our third co-host, Joe, couldn't be here today because we're redesigning his brand and he has to start wearing go-go boots.
He saved a little girl.
Oh yeah, Stan Lee was in this.
Mm-hmm.
He was saved a little girl.
So all you want to do is talk about this Eminem thing, and I could not care less.
I completely forgot we did it because of Stan Lee, and so I was like, I don't remember what happened in this movie that is worth making into a joke. Like, no, like, side bit that's, like, worth a Joe joke. And so I was like, I don't know. The last thing I saw on Twitter was people pissed about the Eminem boot thing. And so I was like, I'll just do that. That'll be, like, a funny bit. And every time I'm like, I'm gonna do my stupid little bit, you're always just like, fucking not having it.
This is going to be a weird one, I think.
And our fourth co-host, Uatu, is here, but is sworn only to watch and never interfere because he likes to watch us bicker.
He likes to watch us bicker. Is it funnier when I say it?
You know what? I think it is. I'm going to leave it in.
So today we watched Spider-Man, which originally aired May 3rd, 2002. Not aired. I mean, aired, I guess. Aired on the big screen. Premiered, they call that. Written by David Cope and directed by Sam Raimi. When bitten by a genetically modified spider, Andrew, a nerdy, shy, and awkward high school student gains spider-like abilities that he eventually must use to fight evil as a superhero after tragedy befalls his family. So, Andrew, in a sentence or less, what did you think?
It was fine. It was really long. It felt really, really long for 2 hours. It was fine. What about you?
So, when I was starting this, I didn't realize that they made 2-hour movies 20 years ago, and I could have sworn this was an hour and a half. And yes, this is a very long. I think the script is fine. I think it could have used an extra half hour of editing.
I paused it towards the end just because I was just curious how much was left, because I knew I was coming close to the end. I knew I had to be, and it felt like I had been watching it for 3 hours.
It's really long. I think all of the script makes sense. I just don't think it needs to be there, and it can efficiently tell its story better without a lot of that stuff. Do we want to just jump in?
Well, did you like it or not?
We don't say that up front.
Yeah, we do. I did. It was fine.
No, you didn't say if you liked it or not. You said it was fine. Did you like it or not?
I think that's...
Yes or no?
I mean, yes or no. I mean, I guess by fine, I would have to say yes. I wouldn't really want to watch it again anytime soon.
I would say the same. I mean, it's fine. I think
it shows its age.
It's actually hard for me. I was thinking of this. I actually don't know. There's a lot of stuff in here that I'm not sure how I actually feel about it, because I think there's just a bit of nostalgia in here that I can't separate. I assume you would disagree since...
I mean, I don't have that nostalgia. I liked it better than... Not necessarily better than I thought I would, but I think I actually liked it less than I thought I would, but I liked it better than I remember liking it, because I don't remember this movie very fondly.
There's just stuff like okay, here's the thing. Put your thing in, because we're essentially jumped in. Kirsten actually watched this one with me, and when it finished, she's like, the acting is really bad. And
yes,
here's what I said. There's a really fine line between bad acting
and older acting
and like theatrical camp.
I agree. I think Tobey Maguire's mostly fine. He makes some weird fucking faces.
She specifically called out Kirsten Dunst.
She's bad. I think she is bad. She's hollow.
And I think there's a little bit of hollow in everybody. And I think that's just because, like, it doesn't feel like a real movie in the way, or like, it doesn't feel like a realistic thing. Everybody's dialogue feels like it's been written and rewritten and edited and fine-tuned, and not in a way of like the MCU where we talk about like everybody has to quip and everybody has to like have witty one-liners and things like that. Like that feels written and stuff like that, but it feels...
I agree. It's like rewritten economically. There's a lot of like, what is the word? I am blanking on tons of words today. Not really exposition, but just kind of like
every sentence has like a couple extra words that it needs.
There's always like a bit of like, this line is here because it needs to be here to set up a reasoning for X. Same thing with like, I think part of why you said like, this movie's long and it could have used better editing. And I agree, but I also feel like you could cut out the whole first appearance of the Goblin during the parade, just because it doesn't really serve anything. Except it needs to set up the Goblin so that his only fight with I guess he has that fight in the building, but so that there's not just like one fight at the end with them, he needs to see the villain before that. And it's also to kind of like set up a couple things, like he has to save Mary Jane more than once, because as awkward and forced it is that she falls in love with him after seeing him twice, it can't happen once because that's super weird. Yeah. But at least like in this, like you said, cinematic camp thing, it can happen like twice is like sort of a pattern. And so at that point, like you can just like continue on from there and the audience just goes, yeah, I get it.
Everything feels staged and theatrical to me here.
Yeah.
Like it feels like, I mean, it's not, but it feels like it could be a stage show and how things are written and how things are acted. That's how it feels to me. And I think some of that is like that Raimi camp, which I enjoy.
Yeah, I don't. I didn't mind it, but I do not care for it. It's... Some of it worked better than others.
It would work definitely better.
There's some bad cuts. There's like so many scenes that just like kind of end and then the next scene starts. Like his graduation, just like he talks to Norman and then it just cuts to him walking home with Aunt May, and it's fucking weird.
Yeah, and I think they're able to compare it to the MCU. They're able to let things rest a little better. There's a couple instances where they do not. But I think for the most part, they let things rest a little. I agree that there's some weird scene transitions. I think the whole like costume creation
he does a lot of like weird
overlays. Yeah.
The costume thing where it just like keeps cutting to him like drawing different suits and tearing them away, and then it's like superimposing, and then it like keeps like superimposing Mary Jane, and he comes off like weirdly stalkery. But again, it's like that weird shorthand thing where we're supposed to just be like, he's known her for years. She's the neighbor next door. They've gone to school together. But like it seems like she has never spoken to him before he takes the trash out.
Yes.
And so he comes off like weirdly kind of like creepy. Can I say two things, just because I don't know where else they go, that I was not expecting this movie that I did not care for? One, I told you when we sat down, I was like, I'm ready. And then every time I'm sitting around waiting to record with you, and then I'm just like, I should just tell him I'm ready. Every single time I tell you I'm ready, something comes up that pushes me back a half hour.
I know. I finished, and then I saw, like, I opened up my phone, and I saw that you started, and it said, like, an hour ago, and I was like, no, that's, like, a previous message he sent. And then I looked at it, I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
No, I was ready.
And then you're like, never mind.
Like 2 minutes later, I said, never mind, because I realized I had gone to the store this morning, and I didn't realize when I was taking everything and putting it away. I realized when I wanted one specific thing that I got, and then realized I don't remember taking that out. And then I was like, wait a minute, there was a bunch of stuff I didn't take out. And I looked at my receipt, and I was like, the most expensive items were apparently all put in one bag that was never handed to me at checkout. So I had to drive back to Target, and then I had to like stand in line to fucking get my bag finally. And I was like, I could put this off because I knew you were waiting on me, but I was just like,
nah. I mean,
like,
honestly,
it was like $60 worth of stuff, and I was like, I don't want to wait, and then them just like, I feel like I had only been there like an hour and a half ago, so I was like, if I go there now, I might be able to get it, but if I wait too long, like for all I know, they just
No, I'm glad you did that.
Tough shit. So that's what pushed me back, and I realized like the second I told you I could watch.
It's just unfortunate that the second you told me you could watch, I was like, and silent and throw.
It acknowledged that you had seen it, so I was like, maybe he saw it and he's fine.
No, I think it was like my computer saw it.
So anyway, my point of bringing that up is I probably could have just started the movie anyway, because there's like a fucking 40-minute credits thing that I was not prepared for at the beginning.
Every now and then I'll watch a movie from the 90s and I'm like, oh yeah, you can like really tell. And then when we started this, I was like, oh my God, remember when they just like would go through like not overlay credits?
Yeah.
I mean, damn. It's nice that people get the credit they deserve, but also don't make me sit through that shit. I don't care about director of photography.
But that went on forever, and then I never need to watch another movie that starts with, do you really want to know who I am? Let me tell you the story that we're about to watch. And then it never says anything again until the end of the movie. It's like, are you glad you heard about who I am? My life is not all peaches and puppa dogs. And I hated that. It was awkward. It was stilted. Again, it's that part of that camp, but it just...
So yeah, I was able to
like
hit the camp and be fine with that.
It immediately like time stamps the movie for me. I haven't seen a movie do that since Sonic the Hedgehog, which was weird because Sonic was a movie that came out immediately before the pandemic, but it felt like it came out in like 96. Because of the way it was structured and everything.
But I think there's, like, the origin, like, I think the story is interesting. I think it's, for lack of a better term, concise, in that...
I think it's fine.
In that it really only deals with, like, 5 people. Norman, Peter... I
mean, it technically really only deals with 2. It's Norman and Peter. Harry's barely a thing. MJ's barely a thing. May's barely a thing. Ben is more of a thing, if only because he has, like, I guess more of a direct...
thing with Pete.
Thing with the plot. Well, like
with the plot,
Mary Jane and May are just kind of like damsels. Mm-hmm. And Harry's just kind of there. Ben, at least, like in the part of the movie where he matters, he is taking an action.
Mm-hmm. He has a role.
So
to
he
play.
has like but like May and Mary Jane are just kind of like around to thus be damsels. And that's why, like, it seems a little unfair to say Kirsten Dunst is bad. I think she is, but it's also just like, she doesn't really have a part to play. She's just basically a cardboard cutout with lips that move.
Yeah.
She doesn't really have anything to say. She just kind of like stands there and stares at him awkward. Like, everybody stares at each other. There's a lot of staring in this movie. A lot of long shots of just looking at each other.
But it reminded me a little bit of Homecoming, with like Willem Dafoe's relationship with Tobey Maguire and Michael Keaton's relationship with Tom Holland. I think Homecoming did it better, but I liked how condensed the group was. Everybody kind of knew each other. Everybody, like, Harry knew MJ knew Peter knew Norman. Like, for lack of a better term, there was a web. Everybody was kind of webbed together.
Oh, I get it.
I know, it's like it rhymes. And so I liked that there wasn't just like somebody out of nowhere. There wasn't a big blue space laser. But I've been saying this since fucking Iron Man 1. We don't need origin stories. And this origin story feels so long.
I was surprised at how early on I felt the movie was kind of moving at a relatively decent clip. Not that the origin wasn't long, but just I felt like scenes were kind of brief, and it was just kind of like, this scene has established its point and we're moving on to the next one. I felt like there was a lot of that. There was a lot of just like
the characters and the lab was somewhat brisk.
I felt like it was just like, here's Peter. He's kind of nerdy. People don't like him. Boom, we're going on. Here's MJ. It's the girl that Peter likes. Boom, we're moving on. Here's Harry. It's Peter's friend. Boom, we're moving on. There's the spiders. They got all these different powers. They put them into a super spider. It bites Peter. Boom, we're moving on. And it's just kind of like boom, 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 boom. That said, I don't think any of that's really all that interesting. And it just like, I don't know. I will say, like, as far as origins go, like, it wasn't a whole lot. There's like a scene of him like learning basically all of his powers at once. It's just not very interesting, and I didn't really care, but it just kind of like moves on from that. But then it's just like, I don't know. It goes to the wrestling thing, the cage match, and then like that scene's fun, but then it like cuts to the robber, and then it just cuts to Ben dead, and then it just jumps to like, and then he meets the robber, and
it's a little
no,
stuttery.
It's the guy, and then they just like, then the origin is done. We're done with the origin. He graduates from high school, he goes to college, he makes a real suit with the $100 that he got from, I mean, absolutely economical use of $100. He earns $100 from that guy, decides not to buy a car, and instead builds like a full-on super suit.
But that's like half the movie.
I don't disagree, but I feel like it's weird because I guess this is not in the movie's defense. This is me saying like it's segmented. Like the origin just cuts.
The movie is very stuttery.
And then we just watch the superhero movie from that point. Like they get the origin out of the way. for like the first third to half of the movie, and then the rest of the movie is just basically like rushing to get to that final battle. Not really rushing, but it's just like a condensed what the movie should have been.
Yeah. I think the wrestling thing is, I know everybody loves it. I think like the Bonesaw stuff is goofy fun.
I think Bonesaw, there are 3 great performances in this movie.
Macho
4.
Man Randy Savage.
Macho Man Randy Savage is really, really goofy as Bonesaw in a way that's great. I think the brief bit with Ben is good. And then J.K. Simmons, everybody says it, and for once I'm going to agree with everybody. I think he's a great J. Jonah Jameson. But he's also just like pure camp.
Yeah.
Like, he is just hamming it up. Like, if you had told me that was a stage production, it looked like he looks like he's just on some stage production dressed as some newspaper guy in suspenders and smoking a cigar. Like, he just kind of like sells that character the right way.
I mean, it's very similar to the MCU J. Jonah, but it's a little flanderized and up to 11, which works for me.
I guess I think the MCU one is the flanderized one.
See, this to me and maybe it's just because the whole movie is kind of camp. This one feels like, bring me pictures of Spider-Man.
I agree. He's definitely more campy, but I feel like the MCU one is the flanderized version of that then goes, but now it's in the grittier MCU verse. But he's still just like as stupid and goofy, and they like go full on with like a lot of his crap. In the MCU one, it's just like, it's also like, but he's also got to talk about how Parker's Spider-Man and he's ruining everything and May died and look at all the disaster he causes and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. He's also like a non-character in the MCU, so I guess I
just mean that like, for being a character that's played by the same actor, he plays like the same character well. They do feel very different in like the approach. And I think this is like a way more fun one for me.
And then the last one is, I think Willem Dafoe is great. Mm-hmm. I think he is, I think, whereas J. Jonah Jameson, J.K. Simmons is like pure camp, I think like he is like bordering between actual menacing, serious villain and that kind of like Raimi camp. He's both like, he's like goofy in a way, but he's like doing the campy, sinister stuff in a way that like works really well for me.
Here's how I would kind of describe it. So like J. Jonah Jameson is like chewing the scenery camp, but Willem Dafoe feels like a very like stage production theatrical like Macbeth camp.
Yeah.
Where it feels like he's taking it seriously. And I think he is. I mean, but yeah, I agree. I think Willem Dafoe's great. I think the scene where he's like talking to himself in the mirror and the screen and the camera really keeps flipping is so good. He like changes his body language and stuff when he's talking as the Goblin.
He looks like someone, I mean, he is taking it seriously, but he also looks like someone who's just having fun.
Yeah.
Out of everybody in the movie, he seems like the one that seems like he's really enjoying himself. Like he's just kind of like going for it.
Well, and take it seriously, I mean, this feels like a comic book movie. I think a lot because of the camp and because of like Kirsten kind of talked about Kirsten Dunst's performance as being like soap opera-y, and I don't disagree with that. And I think there's a lot of that. And again, to me, there's just like that really fine line between like what's bad acting and what's like camp and stuff. And like, I just watched her in Power of the Dog and I didn't care for the movie, but she seemed fine in that. And so it's not like something where I don't think she can act or anything, but I felt like she did what the movie wanted her to do and kind of have this, I mean, bombastic's the wrong term, but everything is, again, every sentence has like a few extra words that make it seem written instead of real and grounded. Everybody's movements are maybe a little exaggerated. Like it just feels staged and presented rather than just filmed. And that works for me. I like that camp. I think there's a lot of problems with the movie, and that stuff is like, I just didn't see that stuff. And again, I just kind of forgot where I started. I did that last episode and I'm just like, where was I? I just went on a thing and I just like blanked out for a second. But I think they're like, I agree. JJ's really fun and really good. I was actually surprised at how little there was. Maybe it's just he's in all 3 movies and I've kind of in my brain.
I think he has a bigger role overall in the second one. And this one, he doesn't show up until like halfway through. And
yeah, again, I think like
maybe 3 scenes.
They moved to New York, and I mean, I didn't timestamp it, but I think that's half the movie when they moved to New York. And I was just kind of surprised that it was taken so long to see him, and he's kind of nothing. Like he has almost 2 or 3 scenes. But that's not a lot.
I think he plays the character well. Not that there's a lot to J. Jonah, but I think he does a lot of what I like about J. Jonah very well. I like the bit when the Goblin comes for him and he asks who takes the pictures and he lies and says he doesn't know. Mm-hmm. I think that's like a good there's a lot of like small bits that I think work. I don't think the movie's bad. I just think it's fine.
I think its biggest flaw is its length.
That's
not to say there's not other flaws.
I think its biggest flaw is probably the overall script. I think the acting's not great. I agree that it's probably intentional camp, but it doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
At least not all the time. I agree with you that like lines are written awkwardly. Everybody's saying like a couple more words than they need to. There's a lot of like lines that there were several times where someone said something and I was like, oh, they're saying that
because of
it's
this.
yeah, like there's a lot of like lines that just happen because they need to just like kind of force things into place. And it's economical. I mean, it's still a 2-hour movie that doesn't need to be, but like there are choices in there that are made because they're economical, because they're cutting out needing to explain this or that.
I think the whole script makes sense. Like nothing. It's hard to say, coming from like the worst thing about this movie is its length. It can definitely be edited, but I don't necessarily think there's a lot of stuff that is like wasting my time. And that's not the way to say it, because that's not true, but like nothing feels frivolous.
So I always wrongly say it as 90 minutes, but you usually say like an hour 45 is good for a movie.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with you, but I also disagree with you. Like, I agree. An hour 45 is like a good length for like most singular movies that are trying to do one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2 hours is long, and I don't think this movie needs to be that long, but I also think I kind of hate this type of economic storytelling. I kind of hate a lot of those early movies that are like an hour and a half or just a little above, because they feel condensed. They feel like events happen just because they need to get other events to happen, because they don't want to waste time on anything that isn't necessary. So there is a lot of like, most people don't care, but for me, I do. There's a lot of just like stuff happening that just assumes that I'm filling in the blanks necessary, or assumes that I am allowing these lines to be the only connective tissue that I need. But it always feels wrong to me. It's why like a lot of these movies with a love interest doesn't work, because as far as the movie is often concerned, we watch them meet each other and fall 100% in love over the course of, 90 minutes, and in their lives, maybe 3 days.
Right.
And so a lot of that stuff really frustrates me in this movie. Not just like the love stuff, but just like a lot of it is just like kind of stuff that happens, and it just like happens because it needs to.
There's a lot of shorthand.
I'm just supposed to. Yeah, and it bugs me. And it's like the opposite of like the Marvel movies are all too long. The MCU movies, they're all too long. But they're too long because they're overstuffed with crap.
Yeah.
This one is weird.
Everything makes sense. It's just just some of it needs to be cut.
Yeah, I feel like some of it needs to be cut or rewritten, or like, I don't know. I feel like a movie this length would have worked better if instead of shoving the origin into it, I don't know, you did the fucking 20-minute here's everybody's names that worked on the movie thing at the beginning, overlay the origin with that, and just cut immediately to them in New York with him as Spider-Man, and then I don't know, use that economic storytelling to fill in the blanks of who MJ and Harry are. Make them more of characters that I care about. I don't know. It's not an easy fix. Like,
oh, it's a whole rewrite, but I agree.
It's a whole rewrite, but I kind of feel like everything, because it's so like weirdly like everything is just in service of stuff. Like you said, it feels like a production. And because of that, like, I wasn't really able to enjoy it because I wasn't watching a movie, or I wasn't watching a story. I was watching a production.
Yeah.
I was watching, like, this whole thing come together as a Rube Goldberg machine, but not an actual, like, story being told. The story wasn't what mattered. The story was there to make sure that the scenes they did happened.
They were there to, like, make sure that, like, Spider-Man was on the movie screen. And I think the actual origin where he gets bit by the spider is economical, but I think everything after that until they go to New York is a lot of stuff that you probably just don't need. I think the wrestling stuff is like fun, but it's just like, to take half an hour off of this movie would really help it for me. And I mean, you can also get rid of some of the Spider-Man stuff. Again, the parade, I don't think is necessary.
I feel like any bit of the movie that isn't the like final scene, which I do not like that final scene because it feels like it is just like, and now it's time to wrap the movie up. It doesn't feel like the movie was leading to that. It felt like that was the movie saying we're done now.
I will both agree and disagree.
But I feel like pretty much any scene in the movie that is not the final scene can be completely cut out and replaced or like reutilized by something else. Like, you could cut the parade, but the parade has like a service. You could cut all the people in New York. Like, everything has some kind of like reasoning.
Yeah.
But like you could cut the interviews with the different people across New York. You could cut the part about him needing to get a car. You could cut the wrestling scene. You can cut the origin bit where he learns his powers. You can cut the part where he gets bit by the spider. You can cut the bit where he goes to school at the beginning. You can cut the bit where he like shoots a web in the lunchroom and gets into a fight with Flash. Any part of this movie can be cut out. Like none of it is like each bit is like a building block. So if you cut it out, something has to like kind of be shoved in its place to keep everything standing.
Well, the parts are greater than its sum.
I think that's true, yeah. Any individual scene is fine.
Yeah, it's just all in this long, overdrawn movie. And I agree that I think the ending doesn't necessarily feel earned. I think the parts do lead that way, but not naturally. And I think that's some of like what we saw at the beginning, where it's just a lot of like small scenes, I think movies have kind of evolved in that you don't really get as many like 5-minute scenes as I think you did in like the 90s and thousands, where they're just like, we need to show them at this thing. Well, how do we do that? Well, we have to make a 5-minute scene rather than just figuring it somehow else.
I think the weird thing with the ending for me is that it's not a culmination of everything up to that point. It's really a culmination of like the last like couple scenes immediately before it.
Yeah.
It's not like his fight with Spider-Man or like outside of like the rivalry of them being the only two super people in the universe within the same city. They're not really connected to each other directly. There's not like none of those previous scenes really matter. It's all just like in the scene immediately before it, he learns that Peter loves MJ because Harry just offhandedly says something to him. Yeah. And then the scene like immediately before that, he learns that Peter is Spider-Man. It's all like everything that for that final act, for the most part, is pretty much set up
in the last 30 minutes or so.
In the last like maybe even like the last 15. Like it's all very, very like immediately before it, setting up like a lot of these scenes aren't like long cons. There's a lot of just like setting up the very next thing to happen. Anything that is like structured further down the movie is just basic structure of just like who are these characters and why do they know each other.
And I think that's some of its problems too, where Green Goblin and Spider-Man, like you said, are enemies because Green Goblin is a villain and Spider-Man is a hero. And I mean, that's fine.
That's fine. It's a campy superhero movie.
But it also feels, especially because it does end on, oh, now we have a personal grudge. Like that, I feel like when Peter figures out that Green Goblin is Norman, and when Norman figures out Spider-Man's Peter, it kind of makes the previous interactions unnecessary.
Especially Peter learns that he's Norman like 2 seconds before the movie's over.
Yeah.
I kept thinking like they knew throughout. I remembered it as being like they both knew. Kind of like,
when does Peter learn?
How the comic, he learns when Norman takes off.
I thought he knew him before that. I thought there was like a little eyebrow lift.
I thought there was, but I don't think there is, because he seems like he is genuinely.
But maybe that's an audience thing where it's like,
yeah,
like, we think he knows or something. Like, or like, oh, I can put the pieces together. Like, I thought he knew before that, but yeah, maybe you're right. I actually think you're right in that, because he does seem very surprised that it's Norman.
It's like 2 seconds before
he kills himself.
Norman stabs himself in his own dick.
His green meanie. His
little goblin.
His little goblin. His little goblin.
His little pumpkin pouch.
His goblin and pumpkins. His little goblin nose.
I like the goblin suit. I like
the goblin suit because when Norman is making a thing for the military, he's like, "This is my supervillain suit." It is so no.
I like how the goblin suit. Okay. One, I don't think I mentioned it when we talked about No Way Home. In No Way Home, the brief bits that we see of the goblin suit, the helmet has like purple in its like cone thing.
I really don't remember it.
No Way Home. It's like a subtle like shine on it. Like an iridescent sort of like.
Well, and there is some of it in here.
Oh, okay. I never noticed.
At the end, I mean, I don't think
100% green.
I think he's 100% green, but I think especially in the last scene when they're in like wherever they're fighting, I think they do have like a purple secondary light, because there is a purple on. Because I actually think that staging is really good.
In No Way Home, when he shows up later, like he's got like purple in his armor, but that's all like new stuff. But I like this costume. I don't remember if I liked it or not at the time. I remember everybody hating it later.
I don't like it.
I like it for what it is. Like, would I rather like a goofy goblin costume, or like maybe he transforms like he does in the Ultimate Comics? Yeah, but like I feel like this works for what it is. It is goofy that like when they show the test suit, there is no helmet. He apparently like went home and made that thing or something. And like there's the shorthand in the background of his mansion when you can see like a bunch of tribal.
He looks at masks. He's like, "Yes, father, I shall become a mask."
But, like, I love the goofy grin. I love that you can see his mouth behind the mesh thing behind
I hate his eyes that raise.
I kind of love it. Like, I love
What's
when
the
he's,
point
like,
of that, though?
doing his stupid... Oh, it's like the precursor to the MCU let's tear off our mask for no reason
But see,
crap.
when he blows up Peter's mask, and you can, like, see Pete's eyes through it, like, that's really good. But I just don't know any reason why normally would be like, we gotta raise I need to make sure people can see my eyes.
Yeah, so the actor can emote.
Yes.
So you can see it through those goggles, but it's so that you can clearly see.
It's totally an actor movie thing. It's not a character thing, and that's what bothers me.
Oh, absolutely. But, like, I don't know. Again, like, this is where I'm like, it's a movie production. Whereas everything else, I was kind of, like, against you on that. This is where I'm like, it works for me.
Need it
like,
because it's a movie.
Especially because I liked seeing, like, I mean, he's really hamming it up. He's really going for it. And it works for me, especially, like, I like before he raises the stupid things, you can still see his face. And you can see him just, like, fucking going for it.
Yeah, you can see his eyes through it. That's the other thing. It's because you can see his eyes through those things.
But I think it's just to make it clear.
Yeah.
Like,
you can emote
I feel like
better
it's
with
just,
it.
yeah. But I don't know. Like, I like this costume. I don't love it. I don't prefer it. But, like, for what it's doing and the purpose it serves in the movie as, like, a shorthand explanation.
It feels like the costumes, and you're probably going to say, I don't disagree. It feels like the costumes we hate, where it's just like, why can't he just wear, like, a leotard thing? This feels like nobody wants underoos. We got to give him a military bodysuit.
Yeah. I mean, it is.
Yeah. And like I said, it's so goofy. I don't know how else Oscorp could be seen as not making supervillain weapons. When the military's in and they're like, I mean, he is the person testing the glider is like a straight up supervillain looking thing there.
To be fair, anybody that, like, knew got blown up on his first, like, public appearance. Or not even blown up, like, turned into skeletons. But, like, I don't know.
How about when he does vaporize those people?
What works for me, I think, with the costume is, I think it works for me because it is so stupid, but I know it thinks it's serious. Like, it's trying to be serious, but it's so stupid, and that is what just, like, tickles
me. It's a campy seriousness.
Yeah, it believes it's being serious. Like, this is the serious answer to the goofy
They
Goblin
said we can't
costume,
have
but
unitards,
they just made,
they
just made
it still needs to be comic booky and goofy. I mean, the mask is fun.
It works for
the mask is a lot of fun.
I like it. I think the mask looks good. It's just, I mean, it's not the Green Goblin, and it is all over the place stupid, but, like, it's a good design. It looks fun. It's kind of silly. He's got that big stupid grin with the teeth on it. You can see his face underneath it.
I don't like how armory and robotic it looks, but I mean...
Okay, speaking of armory and robotic, how about the other test suit that he goes and blows up, which is just like a fucking, like, bubble dome over a guy with a jetpack. You can't even move.
All that stuff was... I mean, I understand why it's in the movie, but it doesn't need to be there. That you can cut that stuff. You can cut the quest stuff.
It's just like the quick shorthand of, like, why does he turn into a supervillain? Why would he test on himself? And it's like, well, the only reason he would test on himself when it's
because it's at the end of
crazy.
It's like he's running out of time.
He's running out of time. He's got to do something. The military is going to pull their funding, even though I'm pretty sure, like, in real life, there's, like, some kind of contract thing with that where they can't just, like, change their mind 2 days later. Maybe they can. I don't fucking know how that stuff works, but I would assume there's, like, a contract sign that's like, but then again, they could just rewrite the movie and be like, the contract's up in, like, 4 days. You got to show us results, or we're going to do it. But the guy's just like, I'm going to pull your funding. And then
well, the same thing when, like, Quest is buying Oscorp and they kick him off they need his resignation. Like, that's his descent into, like, I have nothing left to lose. Like, again, everything goes somewhere.
Economical.
Everything, you can't just straight cut things. You can't throw them on the floor because everything is interconnected. It's the Star Wars thing. When they're watching it, like, you can't cut this because everything's, like, double screened and immediately wipes into something else. And
yeah, I mean, it's a fucking Jenga tower of a movie.
It's long. But everything makes sense.
Each piece can be removed, but you got to make sure that it's still stable somewhere else.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say, speaking of robotic, how about Kirsten Dunst?
Hey-o, bazooka.
No, there's really nothing to say. Like you said, she's not really a character.
She's kind of wooden.
Yeah, she's wooden.
Like I said, no one's really it's the only people who are actual, like, characters are Peter, who isn't, like, a huge character. Like, he's fine, but he's kind of blank.
He's Mary
really
Sue-ish.
But he's exactly what you need to follow a character who is completely inoffensive in most ways.
I think Toby does a good Peter.
I think he does too. For as much as I remember him poorly, I remember all the dumb faces he makes, and he looks kind of schlubby. but I think he works.
I think he's a
I
nice
think he
Peter.
works in this movie. I think he's a bad Spider-Man, but I think it's also just like this movie is written with a Spider-Man who's not funny, whose jokes are all stupid. Where he's
His
like,
jokes are really
what does he say? Like,
stilted.
there's that one where he's like in the burning building, and he says something like, the Goblin says something like, "Come out, Spider-Man," and he's like, "You're the one that's out of your mind," or something stupid like that. And I'm like, fuck this. He's a bad Spider-Man, but I also don't know how much, like, that's not really Toby so much as it's just
That's
like it's a
the writing,
bad Spider-Man script. He's just kind of like he's like a nothing here. I feel like there was a script written where he was just standard heroic superhero, and then someone said, but Spider-Man's funny, he's got to say jokes. And so they went back
And
in
we're like,
and
where
like,
can we add him?
wrote in some like quick, stupid little jokes, but they're all like kind of just like nothing because they're all just kind of like
Nothing.
thrown into scenes.
JJ will be like, hey, I knew you were evil, and then he webs him up, and he's like, Mom and Dad are talking. Yeah, cut all that stuff. Well, you need it because Spider-Man quips, but how
He
about
doesn't quip
how
well.
good, I mean, a lot of the Green Goblin stuff is really good. When he, like, pretends to be the
Hysterical.
victim in the fire.
So great. Best part of the movie.
Yeah, like, this is all, like, there's good stuff here. Like,
Speaking of, we were talking earlier about jump scares. Best jump scares when he just like turns around and he's like, ah! And he's got the stupid shawl. It's great. Love it.
I mean, there's a lot of good stuff here. It's just a shame that it's in 2 hours. And it's really long, and it feels long.
It feels so long. It's not as bad as, but it's just like the Dark Knight Returns, where it just like felt like a 4-hour movie that was 70 minutes long.
And again, I think the Spider-Man stuff works better than the non-Spider-Man stuff. By that being like the second hour is better than the first. And I think another problem with it is that I think Tobey's a good Peter, but there's not really like, what makes Spider-Man fun, we've always said, is he still has like things to deal with. Like as a kid, as Peter, he has alter ego crap.
This movie gives him almost nothing.
Yeah, there's really nothing. I mean, they talk about like going
It's
to
MJ.
college and stuff and things like that, but like none of that matters. He's looking for like, you don't really see him struggle as Peter. And for a 2-hour movie, give me some of that. And yeah, like the only hardship Peter goes through is that like, my best friend's dating my wannabe girlfriend, my crush.
And then at the end when she's like, I decided I love you, even though we've only had like 2 scenes where you just kind of stared at me. And then he's like, I can't be with you because I'm a hero. And like, I don't know, I'm apparently really bad at this secret identity thing. And who knows if another supervillain shows up and they might find out who I am. Which I mean, is true. That's what happens. But like, he's only fought one super person and they found out because they were immediately connected to him. It's not like they found out because he was like bad at superheroing. Not to say that he's great, but like, he doesn't find out because he like let it slip through, like, it's not like he was trailed home or anything. He just like,
he didn't bandage his
the
arm.
supervillain happened to be his best friend's dad, who was there at Thanksgiving immediately after they duked it out over Macy Gray.
About that. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know how much of it I'm just like blending all 3 of these movies together, but I feel like people are more things. Like, more Spider-Man-y things happen in the other ones, but maybe not.
I think the special effects are
Dated.
serviceable, but dated.
When he is running across the rooftops, when he first learns that, like, I'm Spider-Man, I'm going to learn how to be Spider-Man montage, that's really bad.
Okay, I think that's, like, not great, but I think what's really bad is when he hunts down Ben's killer. It's, like, really awkward CGI. They hide it in a lot of shadows, which they do with a lot of it throughout this movie, but that is one where he looked like a video game character.
And the Goblin always looks like a video game character.
But there's a lot of, like, bad CGI. It's fine. Like, the floats looked like they were not there.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, it's all fine. It's of its time. It's completely serviceable. I remember at the time that, maybe not this one, but I remember at the time Spider-Man 2 came out, everybody was saying how it was, like, the best CGI. And I remember looking at it not horribly long ago and being like, ooh, this didn't age well, but...
It's just the nature of
I mean,
CG.
it's fine. It's serviceable. It's just noticeable.
Yeah. It's not, like,
But
so
it's
bad
fine.
it's
It's also weird
distracting.
because he moves differently when he's a CGI Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. He moves more like Spider-Man, and then when he's Tobey Maguire, he just kind of, like, hunches a bit.
Also, I don't know if you knew this. So when he saves MJ from being assaulted, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
How about when MJ is being assaulted and that one guy just barks at her?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, like the first guy is like... And then it goes to the other guy and he's just like...
How about when he saves MJ from being assaulted and then she's like, hey, let me kiss you upside down. This is like the hottest thing that's ever happened. And it's like an awkward, weird... I feel like that would be a weird thing. And then she like goes to pull off his mask and he's like, wait. And then she stops for a second and then she just like goes and does it anyway. And I was thinking like, he said, wait, maybe don't do
consent.
that.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
And then it's just, it's weird. The whole thing is weird. It's weird that they kiss. It's weird that he just like lets her start to, especially because like, I don't know. I guess he he does know her because he's Peter, but I was like, it's weird that he like let her even like attempt to take off the mask, but for all you know, she's gonna pull the whole thing off. Why did he not have a mask? I must have zoned out because when he was fighting those muggers, he didn't have his mask on, and I was like, why doesn't he have his mask on? Was he not able to put it on in time?
I guess he didn't put it on in time. I was wondering that too.
Whatever it was, I missed it.
Yeah, same here.
I just like noticed that he wasn't wearing it, and I was like, wonder why? Because it's raining and dark. I thought she found out who he was in this movie, but she doesn't. How about when Norman stabs himself in his own dick, and then he's like, don't tell Harry, and then Peter strips him naked and takes him and his mangled dick home and lays him on the couch.
You're not wrong.
And then Harry walks in, he's like, what'd you do to my dad?
Why is his dick all mangled, Pete?
Fucking disappear.
What'd you do? Spider-Man mangled my dad's dick.
The next day, the Daily Bugle tabloid has a picture of him angry, and it says, Spider-Man mangled my dad's dick.
Bring me pictures of Norman's mangled dick. You're not wrong.
He just I can't. They asked him what's going on. The article just says like, I came home.
My dad's dick was on
Spider-Man. My dad's dick was hanging off. It was just hanging there by webbing. He's wearing webbed underpants, like holding his dick in place.
Do people know he was a Green Goblin?
With a note that said, sorry from your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Courtesy, your friendly
My condolence. I'm sorry for your loss, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And they drew a little Spider-Man face with a tear.
He drew a little dick butt with a Spider-Man mask.
he drew my dad and then his dick and an arrow that said sorry.
Does he know that he's Green Goblin? Nobody knows that, right? Just Peter?
Nobody knows that at this point. Because Peter said, all right.
I won't tell Harry.
I guess I won't.
But your dick's real mangled, bro. I don't like when he brings MJ back and Harry's there and he's like, what'd you do? I'm going to shoot you. I think James Franco's decent in this. Again, he doesn't get a lot to work with.
I remember thinking he was good in 2. Now we know he's like a sex pervert. So.
Yeah, well, we're talking about
in the movie. I think he's fine in this movie, but he's also in like 2. He was one of the many things like J. Jonah Jameson where I remembered him having more of a role.
Again, I don't know if I'm just like thinking of all 3 movies combined.
In the second movie, I remember he has much more of a role. I remember J. Jonah being in a lot more of these movies. I think in the second movie, he also has more
Is
of a
Flint
role.
Marko in the third one?
J. Jonah, yes.
Good job. You win.
But I win.
Another year of friendship.
Your dick unmangled.
I'm gonna unmangle your dick.
I don't know. I don't really have anything else, I guess. I mean, I like the spider sense noise, and I like the first scene with the spider sense. It's like, again, completely could be cut out because it goes on for like 2.5 minutes.
When he saves MJ? Or not saves, but when he...
Oh, no. I guess the first visualization, right before Flash punches him. When it like slows down time and it shows like a million things happening around him. I think that's fun. I don't care for the score. It's
the
serviceable, but it's like
hero song.
Yeah, no, the Danny Elfman score. I think it's completely serviceable, but it's also just like kind of like bland standard superhero theme. It doesn't sound much different than anything else Danny Elfman does. It's just like very bland, very whatever. I
didn't notice
completely serviceable.
I don't think you're wrong.
I was kind of thinking of it because in No Way Home they play a tiny bit of their music. I think when both of them show up. Like, it plays a bit of each Spider-Man's music at some point. Yeah. I don't remember exactly when it is, but I think it's when they first show up. But I remember that, and I was trying to remember what his sounded like. And so when I was making note of it in this, because when I rewatched Amazing Spider-Man not that long ago, I actually like his theme in that. It's also kind of like, I guess, kind of standard superhero-y, but I like it better than this is like nothing. This doesn't really, I don't know. It's just kind of like bland. You could have put it in any movie. You could probably do the same thing with Amazing Spider-Man's. I don't remember it well enough. But
yeah. I feel like there was something else I wanted to... Oh, I meant to talk about this a long time ago. It's really dumb. And that's when Peter's trying to buy a car. And then there's that weird overlay of MJ in a car, and it looks stupid.
Well, there's a lot of weird overlays.
He does that overlay with the spider suit coloring twice. And I think that one's decent.
I was going to say, he does it at least like 2 or 3 times, I thought.
I also don't like how, I know why, but it always bugs me that all these people are good artists.
Because it diminishes your skill that you've worked so hard for if anyone can do it.
It's just something I always think about where I'm just like, good thing this guy's just a good artist. And he's drawing like fucking
I always kind of think the same thing whenever it happens, but it's whatever.
I don't know if you know. But so when I was going to say this a while ago, when he saves Mary Jane and they're swinging through the city and she's like holding on to him, in the daylight. You know, that's just like a mannequin.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And and it was something that like I knew that. And when I was watching it, I was just like, he is so stiff right now. And it looks like a mannequin. And it's just like, it was a total stage thing where I was just like, I'm watching a movie.
Oh, so they're both mannequins.
No, hey-oh.
Well, you said he looks so stiff right now, so I thought maybe you meant like they were both like, they just like glued two mannequins together and swung
No
them.
kiss. No. No, MJ was a living, breathing human. I think. I will say, I liked the ending. I think it's a little fast, and you might swoop in with your vast memory of these superhero movies. But I liked how the climax wasn't just like, I have to punch this guy into oblivion. It was like, I have to save people. And I have to like make a heroic choice.
I agree, but at the end it does turn into like I guess at the end it's a little bit of like I gotta punch this guy into oblivion, but mostly like he's punching me into oblivion, and I don't want him to do that no more.
Yeah,
but then
and it's
I
only
also,
like
I'm
5-10 minutes instead of 30 minutes.
I don't care for the villain has
So, like, I pick, you
part
choose.
of like that too, but like I don't care for the No Way Home like attempted to comment on this but didn't really do a good job because it wasn't really saying anything, but like I don't care for the villain's gotta die at the end of an action movie kind of crap. And so like the ending of both this and The Mugger are kind of like, I'm not gonna kill you but I don't have to save you sort of crap from Batman Begins, where arguably at the end of this movie, it could have been like he just instinctively dodges out of the way of that thing and then it hits Norman. And I was like, Norman's like weird, like, oh, right before he gets
yeah, it's like that little cut. Yeah, that's very Raimi.
That could be argued of like he didn't know that was going to happen, but like when the Mugger like falls out the window, he just like stands there and watches like a fucking serial killer.
To be fair, that was also like
the guy trips on his own, but like he just kind of watches him. And like I get where it's coming from, but it's also just like, I don't know, that kind of stuff rubs me the wrong way. And it happens in the real comic as well.
Yeah. That's just like, that's the other end of the with great power comes great responsibility, where it's like, you know, now's the point where you'll choose who you are for the rest of your life. And it's just like, this is him kind of choosing
to let this guy die.
Yeah, just like taking revenge and being vengeful and stuff like that. I mean, I see where you're coming from, and I like a heroic superhero, but I guess these are fine for me. But it would be nice to like just not kill a villain at the end of a movie, and even if you still win, like, I don't know, it's weird, especially coming from comics where like nobody dies, and it's just like
and I mean, I don't know, like I really liked in Homecoming when he saves, like he specifically goes out of his way to save Toombs. Yeah. And I think again, the death of the villain, it's fine in this. It's more the killer at the beginning, which again has a reasoning. Like, one, to get him out of the way because he pulls off his mask and learns his identity. But it also, like, you're right in that, like, that's a moment of revenge. But it would be better if, like, that was also his defining moment of, like, now is when you choose who you want to be, and I don't want to be someone who goes for revenge. Yeah. And so that one rubs me more wrong than the Goblin. But also, like, you could have gone in the different direction of, like, the Goblin is just, like, so fucking crazy. And while in the end he does kill himself, it could have been structured in such a way. Again, I think this is what happens in the comic as well, so it's not like it's inaccurate, but it could have been structured in such a way that he leads to his own demise in more of a way where Peter either tries to stop it or it feels like Peter just lets it happen. I know that's not what happens.
I don't get that.
But it just like, it's a nitpick from me, but it just like kind of rubs.
It doesn't feel like a deliberate act by Peter. It feels very reactionary to me.
Oh, it is. But it also just like, I don't know. It's a nitpick from me. Another nitpick from me. I used to like the parts where New York rallies around Spider-Man. When I rewatched Amazing, the little bit where people rally around Spider-Man worked for me, but in this,
I didn't mind when they throw bricks at Green Goblin.
One guy like throws something at him. I think it was like a can or something. Maybe it was a brick, but the first thing that hits him like sends him spiraling out of control. And I was like, that seems a lot for like this super suit that he was wearing, dressed like a goober. But I didn't like it just because they're like, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. And I'm thinking like, after the pandemic, I know that's not fucking true. Like, no one's gonna rally around this like maniac with this guy in a flying suit with missiles and spikes and bombs. They're not gonna throw it. They're gonna stand there and watch.
They're gonna say, this guy has the freedom to dress up as a Green Goblin in a glider and blow people and disintegrate people. That's his freedom. The founding fathers would have wanted that. It's what they imagined when they created this best country in the world.
Anyway, I think that's all I've really got.
I think that's all I've really got. I have no context of how long this was because I feel like we talked for a long time. But yeah, I mean, like you said at the beginning, I think that's a testament to it being fairly unoffensive. It's fine. I think it does a lot of things well. I don't think it does things terribly. I think it just has some kind of big flaws.
Seth, give me 2 put-ups and a put-down.
Well, Andrew, my first put up is going to be I really liked Willem Dafoe. I think he's a good Green Goblin. Actually, instead of saying Willem Dafoe, because I'm going to broaden this up by saying Green Goblin, I think he's written well. I think Willem Dafoe works with it very well. I like when he's talking to himself in the mirror. Great scene, great cinematography there. I like when he pretends to be the damsel in distress for Spider-Man to save. I think that's good villain stuff.
Speaking of it's not really sitting in the mirror, but at the time this came out, I bought all the action figures for it because I had disposable income because I was like a junior.
You still have
in high
disposable
school or
income.
whatever. I had disposable income and no responsibilities.
There you go.
I bought all the action figures that came out,
You made him
and
kiss?
there was one for Norman Osborn that came with a chair, and it had a little goblin mask with light up eyes that you like plugged into it, so it was like looked like it was hanging off the back of the chair. And when you sat him in the chair, the seat cushion was a button. When you sat him in the chair, he'd say stuff like, "We could rule everything, you and I." And the eyes would light up, and it was the best. There was also a J. Jonah Jameson action figure that had a desk.
And then there was a button on his chair.
Well, no, so he had a desk and a chair and a whole bunch of like crap on his desk that was like, it had like little pegs in it so that they were like loose on the desk. And he had an action, like a lever on his back that he would slam the desk and everything would shake.
I mean, this is good stuff.
Anyway, just thinking of that.
He had
Anyway,
like the Power
continue
Rangers
on.
karate chop action.
Yeah, but he slammed his desk and his other finger was constantly pointing.
And then when he sat him in his chair, I pressed the button and he said, "You and I can rule this world.
Get me pictures of Spider-Man.
Get me pictures of J. Jonah Jameson."
Get me pictures of the Goblin's
I
mangled
was going to make
dick.
that joke, but I didn't like it. I think all the Goblin stuff is gobbledygood. My second put up is going to be, hey, this isn't my second put up, but I learned that the spider that bites Peter, I don't know where, I don't know when, I am imagining after it like jumps off him and it's on the ground and it like crawls underneath the thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
That is a real spider.
Oh, really?
I assume it's there. All I know is I was reading some trivia on this when I was waiting for you.
So you're saying Tobey Maguire was bitten by a real spider and
He got real power.
powers and
This
shot
is a
real
documentary.
webbing out of his wrist.
This is... No, the genetically modified spider that bit Peter Parker was not a Black Widow spider, but a Statoda grossa spider, which was chosen by Stephen R. Kutcher and painted red and blue by Jens Schnabel while the spider was anesthetized. Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
I thought that was just like a CG spider.
Weird that they took an actual spider.
And painted it. They gave it sleeping gas and then painted it. How about when... we didn't talk about? This isn't my second put up either. Sleep. Did he say that when he sat him in his chair and the Green Goblin eyes lit up?
Yes.
Sleep. My second put up is going to be, I liked the ending. I like that it wasn't 30 minutes long. I like that it was like a heroic choice instead of just like, I need to punch this guy into oblivion. I like when people threw bricks at Green Goblin. I like when his mask got blown off. My put down is going to be, I am going to say graduation. And I'm going to say graduation to try and be as specific as I can, because I think my put up should be its length. But I'm going to say graduation because graduation is kind of the culmination of length problem in that I don't think it's necessary to have graduation. And I think a lot of that, like I said before, a lot of that stuff between him getting...
You just don't like the education system.
Teachers, leave those kids alone. I think all the stuff between Peter getting bitten and them graduating and moving to New York is kind of where all of my length and editing issues lie, where I think Bonesaw is fun. I think you kind of need the montage of him learning his powers and things like that. I don't think you need the montage of him making his suit. And like him graduating is such a non-thing anywhere. I know it's there because they have to have that thing where it's like, oh, I miss Uncle Ben and yada, yada, yada. and Harry also sees MJ break up with Flash, and so he can swoop in there for his sloppy seconds. But I think that graduation it feels so empty, especially because you then don't go into like him dealing with student life or anything like that. You don't even really see him deal with student life in high school.
Outside of the fact that they say he's doing... Aunt May has like one line where she's like, you do so much working and going to college.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's in college? I mean, I know he is, but like, you never see
Yeah,
it.
he's not struggling with anything. Like, that's just kind of a catalyst of some of the other problems I have with it.
Yeah. Put up number 1, Willem Dafoe. Put up number 2, J.K. Simmons. Put down,
Kirsten Dunst.
I'm going to say the length. It felt very,
It
very,
felt
very
really
long. there are a lot of things that I had problems with, and probably things that are more of a problem than the length, but I think the length is just something that it permeated the entire movie. It was not very long in where I kept thinking, like, early on, I kept thinking, like, this is moving at a pretty quick pace. And I think it probably was around the time that Ben died and he confronted the killer. And I think graduation, I think, is the scene immediately after that, maybe. But it was around that time that I was just like, all right, I'm ready to move on now. And then it just kind of like kept going. And I kept thinking, like, when's he going to fight the Goblin? When's
he going to mangle Goblin's dick?
When's he going to gobble Goblin's dick?
He doesn't do that.
How about when the Goblin, like, rams him from behind into a building?
Like sexually?
Like sexually.
I don't remember this.
I
know it's not sexually. I don't remember this.
During the Macy Gray parade
concert
thing, he, like, grabs him and like slams him in the building, but they're like both standing upright, and he just kind of like slams him into the building.
Oh, he's like holding,
and then he like bashes his head into it, but like as a quick shot, he just kind of like slams into him. They're both like standing upright against this building.
Yeah.
It's weird. But yeah, I think the length is the biggest problem throughout the entire movie. It's just long and unnecessarily so. But like we keep saying, in its defense, like, it's not structured in a way where you can easily cut anything out. It's not like the MCU movies where there are just scenes of nothing.
Yeah, scenes relate to each other and they build off each other and stuff like that. It's just long, and it doesn't need to be
MCU movies are like 2 hours plus, but they're full of scenes that don't go anywhere. This is like full of scenes that all establish something. It's just something that could have been put in another scene or could have like been cut out, but then you have to cut out something else. It's just a weird movie overall, and it just feels cobbled together is not correct. Haphazard, I guess.
Well, it feels all the
That's
scenes are kind of like,
it feels scattered,
yes.
I guess. Everything is kind of all over.
It's like I said, where I think movies have kind of moved away from this, but before, I feel like it was not a trend, but people just kind of made movies where they said, we need to have this. How do we do this? And it's like, well, just put a 5-minute scene in there. And it's just like, you just have a movie of like 500 5-minute scenes instead of a couple longer ones that, you know, hey, maybe instead of just like having this scene that you have to cut to and then cut away from and only spend 5 minutes because all you need to do is have a character say a thing, why not just have them show up in another, like, write them and now they're here. It's like very kind of comic booky storytelling where you can do that in comics, I feel. Because it's broken up into panels and pages, you do have those natural breaks where shorter scenes don't feel as awkward as they do in a film.
I think you're right. Like, I never really thought about it, but you're kind of right that like comics do have like scenes that last a page and they exist only to set up an idea, but they don't like, they're not as noticeably awkward as these because I didn't really think about it. I was thinking there were a lot of like weird cuts and a lot of like short scenes, but I didn't really think about it till you said it. This movie is almost entirely 5-minute scenes. Outside of like the 2 big Goblin appearances, like the 2 big Spider-Man scenes, almost every scene is just like a brief 5+ minute scene that just was there to establish something, either a line of dialogue or an explanation or just like a setup. Like they're all just like there to do a thing and then move on from that thing. And then they're like all kind of like held together because another scene will either play off of what that scene said or did, or like you can't cut out him using these webs in the lunchroom because of the fight with Flash. I mean, you could have the fight with Flash elsewhere, but you can't just like cut that because of just like movie continuity of like Flash having crap on his clothes and I think referencing why the fight happened and everything. You can't cut that fight with Flash because Ben references it later when Ben gives his little speech. And that's part of like, that's the only moment in the movie where Ben says like, you know, we don't know who you are anymore. You won't talk to us and you're changing and, you know, life is different. But we don't actually see any of that. He misses painting, but it's not really a thing. It's never even really mentioned outside of Ben later during that speech saying like, you're shirking your responsibilities and you got into a fight. But like the whole movie is like that. It's all just like lines of dialogue or bits of information that are established somewhere else in another 5-minute scene so that if you cut them out, you have this blank hole somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the entire movie feel long. It could all just be like streamlined, but it requires an entire rewrite. So put down is the length, much like my very long put down.
Hey, those aren't in a minute or less, or in a sentence or less.
Where did you put this in your rankings of every Marvel movie ever? Every superhero movie ever?
Well, I would rather watch The Falcon and the Winter Soldier instead of Spider-Man, and I would watch Spider-Man over Captain Marvel. I got it at 21.
We're in this weird spot for me now where I have put everything on that gut reaction of how do I feel in this moment? Would I do? Is it better than? And would I rather watch it above this or that? So that things are in like weird positions. Where I remember liking Iron Man, but Iron Man's kind of low on my list.
Is this like a thing where you're like, even the worst Marvel movie is better than the best any movie?
No, I'm in this weird position where like I'm looking and like I would put it below this movie, but I'm like, wait a minute, I would put it above this movie that's above that. Anyway, I put it at number 25, below Iron Man, above Endgame. Endgame's too fucking long. Iron Man, I think, is short, breezy, to the point. It's a fine movie. I think it's more concise than this one. But I mean, this is kind of low. It's honestly in a weird spot where I could probably throw it lower because it feels so long that I don't really know if I would want to watch it again.
Yeah, I don't know when I would watch this again.
Like, I have it above Thor the Dark World, but I would watch Thor the Dark World above this easily. But I'm also just like, I put Endgame and the Snyder Cut so high, but I'm like, I wouldn't want to watch them over this. Those are both fucking long, but that's where I got it.
Thanks for hanging out with us. If you like this, tell a friend. If you didn't, then lie to a friend. Check us out on Twitter at SoHowAbout. You can find me on Twitter at SethKumpf. You can find Andrew on Twitter at TessuDownist. And subscribe to us on YouTube at SoHowAbout.
And join us next time when we do this once more with Interference.
Watcher. Boop.
So, Seth, now that the mics are off,
Andrew,
what are we
I am
watching next?
so glad you asked. We don't know what we're going to be watching next time. We just don't know. But there is a poll on Twitter at SoHowAbout. We're either going to be watching...
By the time anybody hears this episode, it'll be too late to vote.
Well, that's true, but you might be able to vote on what we're going to be watching
next
week.
time.
Yeah, as long as we don't have an official Marvel release, this will be going on. So always check. But at the moment, we can either be watching Spider-Man 2 and keep the Raimi trilogy going, Man of Steel, Shazam, or Suicide Squad. So Andrew, which one do you want to watch? Which one do you hope we're watching?
I think I'm probably between Suicide Squad or Man of Steel. I'm actually interested in watching Spider-Man 2. It's just like this was so long and boring, and if 2 is not the improvement that I remember it
Spider-Man
being,
2 is going to be,
it's going to be a
2
slog.
hours and 19 and 12 minutes, I think. It's longer.
I'm interested in watching it, but I don't think I want to watch it immediately after this. I'd rather cut to something different.
At the same time, if we cut to something different, I'd be like, I don't need to go back.
Yeah. I agree with that.
I agree that I'm also kind of in a weird spot where like
I'd like to see.
I'd like to see them. Yeah,
like,
I for whatever I like Raimi more than you do. It was long, and I hope it doesn't. I hope Spider-Man 2 doesn't feel as long. I genuinely think that's what we're probably going to watch. Right now, we're at 5 votes. Spider-Man 2 and Man of Steel are tied, with Shazam getting the last vote.
I think it's also weird if Spider-Man 2 wins. I feel like we just have to do 3 at that
It's up
point.
to the people.
Like we don't even pull it because it's like you said. We're like, if we don't do 2, like I don't really want to go back. But I guess like if it's always out there, it could always come back up. But like I don't know if we do 1 and 2 in the same 2 weeks and then we just like don't do 3 for like ever, it's gonna feel weird. I feel like I just want to like knock all 3. If we do 2, I want to just kind of like knock all 3 out and then move on with my
It all
life.
depends on the fans. But no, we also control this poll and we can make bots and vote on things. You voted on it last time. This isn't for friends and family.
I remembered you saying if you want to vote, vote.
To
But
everyone else, I don't write tweets on our So How About account, and I'm like, hey, make sure you vote, except for Andrew and other...
Well, I lost anyway, so what's it matter? I didn't vote for this.
I didn't want this to happen. Now, if we don't watch Spider-Man 2, I'm interested in Shazam. That's the one I keep on there. Man of Steel and Suicide Squad are yours.